Kip, what's up, man? Good to talk with you again today. Looking forward to the AMA.
I always look forward to this. This is
It's
good
better,
stuff.
and it's better when it's both of us. I mean, I know over the past several months we've had to divide and conquer a little bit, and you do an okay job. It's just better when I'm here, though,
For sure.
and vice versa, and vice versa, man. I think that I
No.
think the dynamic between us two serves the guys well. So
Yeah. No, but it's always I do enjoy the solo just because it's challenging for sure. But it's good
what's
nonetheless.
challenging about it for you? Like, what is the most challenging issue with it?
Um it's just the ability that I can hit pause and start over, and it's not an inconvenience to anyone else. So it's super tempting to respond to a question and go, okay, I said the same thing like five different ways. I could have just said the first initial sentence and moved on. You know
Yeah,
what I
but
mean? And I
so I know
repeated
what you're
something and then I
saying.
was like, damn it, I should hit stop and start over.
I know what you're saying, but
So,
here's what I found is when you mess up, just own it. Like
yeah.
instead of restarting it, just say, "Damn, guys, sorry, I screwed that up. Just I'm an idiot. Let me just start that over." And if you
Yeah.
just own it, and I learned this a long time ago in sales. My background is retail sales, clothing specifically, and if you just own the potential objection by somebody else, so in this case, a listener might say, "Oh, you sound like an idiot." If you just say, "Sorry, guys, I realize I sound like an idiot," you just took away all of their ammo to
Yeah.
come back, and you made light of it, and you diffused the situation, and it's just better. You know
Yeah.
what? Even like I even think about this with talking with women. I know there's a lot of guys who struggle with talking with women. Just say it. Hey, you know what? I've been out of the game for a while, okay, so bear with me on this, guys. But it's like you try to approach a woman, it's like, hey, I just feel really uncomfortable because I'm intimidated around attractive women.
Yeah.
Like you just own it, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden it's like there's nothing that they can come back with, right? And so I found that if you just own your shortcomings or even your perceived shortcomings, people are like, yeah, I know what he feels like because I have that same issue. But it's
Yeah.
when we
And you're
try
not
to like pretend like we're better than we are, people can see right past that
yeah.
anyways, and then it puts this undue pressure on yourself to perform when it's like just lighten up.
Yeah.
Sometimes I stumble over my words. I realize one of the issues I have is I talk way too fast. It's okay. It's okay. Like you guys will get through it. I'll get through it. I'll get better. We'll all get better. Let's just afford each other some grace and have some fun with it.
Totally. Well, and the other one comes across like you're putting yourself on a pedestal, and that just annoys
Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Because
Yeah.
again, because they can see through it, and then you see when somebody's full of crap and they're trying to put themselves on that pedestal, and it actually creates a wider divide in the connection between you and that person. Like it separates you even
Yeah.
more so when you're trying to resonate and connect and land with people. Find ways, and sometimes some self-deprecation is like a good thing. I realize I trip all over my words. I talk too fast, but I'm excited.
Yeah.
So, deal with it. And
That's
it's
the
fine.
price of, yeah.
Exactly.
Do you ever watch Anger Management? Do you ever
Yeah.
watch that show?
Just tell me who
I,
you
I'm not,
are.
I'm
I
not
just
going to
want to
say
know
it.
who
No,
you
no.
are.
When he goes up to the girl in the bar and he gets coached, and he's like, go up to her and tell her, it's hard to talk to you when I'm on the verge of, you know,
Yes. Yes.
when
That's an
you were
interesting
saying,
show.
yeah, I was like, that's actually funny. I was thinking
Well,
about that when
you
you're
can't
coaching.
game it either, though. That's the difference, though. A lot of guys will like try to game it
Yeah.
instead of just being, and I hate this word, authentic.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say it. I was on the verge of my mouth. I was like, well, I'm not going to say it because Ryan will like blow it off. He's like, no, that's not what I'm saying.
But
So,
even still, think about that word. When people say, how do I be more authentic? Well, you're actually doing the opposite of being authentic by even asking that question
yeah, totally.
because you're trying to be authentic. You cannot try to be authentic and actually be authentic at the same time.
Yeah, you just be.
If you're trying to be authentic, you're anything but authentic.
Yeah,
And that's why I struggle with that phrase so much is because like, oh, you should just be authentic. How do I be authentic? Well, you just be it. Like there's no strategy. If it was a strategy, it would be inauthentic. It's the opposite of what you're trying to create for yourself.
Yeah. Well, and we've chatted about this in the past, but sometimes, well, let's be frank. Any opportunity that people have to be a victim, they have a tendency to latch onto it. And there's a little bit of like, well, I'm just being me, like, and accepting it as though they can't change or evolve or become better. Right. And then
Well,
it
so
becomes
here's,
like this
yes.
excuse of just like being themselves. It's like, well, what is you? Right. Like it's still based upon your action and based upon choice and how you evolve as an individual. So,
Well, this is the problem with the whole like body positive movement and the be happy with yourself and love yourself thing. Like I understand some of the sentiment,
yeah.
but when I say be happy with yourself or be happy with who you are, you talk about being authentic or genuine. I'm not saying be happy with a weaker version of yourself. That's not what that phrase should mean. It does mean that for a lot of people. Hey, you're 50 pounds overweight. Great. Be happy about it. Well, no, that's not authentically you. That's you with 50 pounds more than you should have. So it's not about being happy, with who you are. It's about being satisfied with you working towards the best potential version of yourself. So, because the alternative is if I'm supposed to be happy with myself, why would I go to the gym?
Yeah.
Why would I work on my skill set as a podcaster? Why would I develop new hobbies and skills and activity? Why would I do that? I'm happy with where I am. No, there has to be some sort of hope and optimism for the future. And so rather than being happy with a mediocre version of yourself, be satisfied with the skill sets, the characteristics, the things you're excited about and interested in, all your little weirdos and queer quirks and all that kind of stuff. And think about and focus on who you can become. Now, some people say, well, that's being inauthentic. No, it's not. Working towards who you want to become is not disingenuous. Like if somebody wants to be a master pianist, for example, you wouldn't say to that individual, oh, well, you're being inauthentic because you're practicing the piano. You're not a pianist. Yes, I know, but I'm working to become one. Or you're not a hunter. What? Oh, that's inauthentic. No, you're right. I'm not a hunter. I'm working to become one.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to questions today.
Yeah.
There's our warm up.
Yep. We have one question that Anthony Munoz brought up last week. He said, with the Boy Scouts being in so much trouble and declaring bankruptcy and all of that, any thoughts on starting your own version? I brought up legacy, but I wanted to give you a chance to kind of add to that before we jump into these additional questions.
Yeah, legacy is a great experience. It's a father-son event that we run once or twice a year. Unfortunately, we had to cancel this year's event. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, so we canceled that at the end of last week, and it's unfortunate, but it is what it is in the wake of COVID and all that stuff. And fortunately, we're in a position where it doesn't impact us as greatly as some of these other people and their businesses. We also have a kids battle planner coming out. That should be available, I would say, in the next week or so. So that's one step. But yeah, I've got a lot of plans. Yeah, I always have plans and thoughts and ideas. Whether I implement them or not is something entirely different, because I do try to maintain my focus on working with men, because I feel like if I can help you as a father or a leader in your community, then it's your job to then turn around and help the youth and the kids, whether they're under your direct care because you're biological children or stepchildren, or you're coaching and you're some sort of indirect mentor. Like, my job is to give you what you need, and then you can in turn give the kids in your life what they need to thrive and excel. So there may be some other things down the road that are quasi Boy Scout type situations. We're doing some things in the Iron Council that I think will translate perfectly over into something like that, but it's on the horizon, loosely.
Okay. There you go. From the man himself, Nick. All right, Nick Barnes. What is the best pathway?
Can I say one more thing, Kip, on that last one?
Yeah.
Hey, look, if you feel like there's a gap or a need, then create it. You do it. And I'll do everything I can. But if you're waiting for me to do something, you might be disappointed. That may not be my path. That may not be an interest of mine. I'm not saying that it isn't. I'm just saying if you're waiting for somebody else to provide a solution, you might be waiting a very long time. But if you see like, hey, here's a need, man, take what we've done, model what we've done, model what other people have done that have been successful, and do your own thing. Like, there's nothing to say that you can't, with a kid or your children or your teammates, people that you're coaching, that you can't take a weekly lesson from this podcast and say, okay, well, I'm going to teach this. I'm going to translate this for young men.
Totally.
And I'm gonna create, two challenges based on the one thing they talked about, and I'm going to do that. Like, there's nothing to keep you from doing that. So take ownership of it, take charge, and if you want something, then just go out and create it. That's what I did with the podcast. I wanted an outlet. There was a couple outlets out there. I thought they were lacking in a lot of ways. I thought they were doing some things wonderfully, but I also thought they were lacking in some ways. And so I said, well, it's lacking there. And rather than email them and say, hey, you should do this and this and this, I was like, oh, I'll do that. And now you're listening to it.
Yeah, that's great. Our questions today are from our Facebook group. To join us there, facebook.com/group/Order of Man. All right, Nick Barnes, what is the best pathway for developing a movement with more consistency in principle and method than we've seen in various protests this past few years? It seems like the message and the method are horribly inconsistent for every group from from something that they say that leads to self-defeating protests and riots. So maybe a little bit of a breakdown between the protests and then it turns rioting and inconsistent message.
Look, this rioting and this vandalism and this violence that's happening has little to do with George Floyd. Like, I think we can all admit that, regardless of what side of the aisle you're sitting on. It has long surpassed being about George Floyd. It has long surpassed being anything about violence on black individuals perpetrated by police officers. It's long past that. And those things need to be addressed. Oh, and by the way, they actually are. That's the interesting thing. I can't even think of his name right offhand. The man that kneeled on George Floyd's neck, I can't think of his name right offhand. Well, he was arrested. These guys that ran down that young black man in the street and tried to be vigilant. Well, those guys were arrested. And they're being charged with murder. Those things actually are being addressed. So does it happen? Yeah, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. But justice is like being played out. So like, what is the issue? What exactly is the issue? That's the problem, is that we let movements, and this could happen with Order of Man too. This is a movement, right? If I were to let every Tom, Dick, and Harry into the movement who wanted to spout off his own nonsense or bullshit or do his own program or whatever, and I allowed that to happen, it would be very easy for this movement to be infiltrated by people who don't believe in what we originally set out to do. So I'm very, very vigilant in this. And people say, oh, I can't believe you'd censor. Well, yeah, of course I would. Well, don't you believe in free speech? Yes, but I've never once told you that this is some sort of free speech platform like Facebook has promoted, like Twitter and Google and all these other places. These were founded on being free speech platforms. That's not what Order of Man is. This isn't just the wild, wild west. In fact, I blocked a couple of people today because they were dicks. Not because they disagreed with me, but because they were dicks. Like, I don't have any qualms about, oh, you're censoring them. No, I'm not. Well, maybe I am. Yeah. Like, this is my movement. So I think if you're talking about starting a movement or you're looking at these movements, then those people need to be very clear about what it is they're trying to do, and then not let other people who are not interested in that movement be associated with it. Because BLM at this point is, frankly, it's a joke. What does that even mean at this point? It's well beyond Black Lives Matter. By the way, everybody agrees with that. We're fortunate in that we live in a country where, when I say everyone, I mean 99.99999%. There's racists out there, right? And there's probably a lot more than we think because they keep their thoughts and their ideas and their behaviors to themselves, which is good. Yeah. That's what we want. But when you say Black Lives Matter, everybody already believes that. I believe that. You believe that. Everybody listening to this podcast, we already believe that. But that isn't that's their name of their organization, but that isn't actually what they believe. I mean, they're talking about dismantling the nuclear family. Well, I don't believe in that. In fact, I believe in the exact opposite of that we ought to embrace the nuclear family and strive as a society to, like I said, embrace it, to embolden it, to help it thrive and to flourish. So I'm not gonna say I stand with that organization. I don't. I believe Black Lives Matter, but I don't stand with that organization. I don't stand with that. And the other part of the problem I think that we see is that so much of the population is just really, really comfortable with just accepting whatever the narrative is. So I saw this thing over the weekend where there was a video of some individuals burning books, and then somebody said, "Oh, they're burning Bibles," and then somebody said it was Antifa, and somebody said it was here, and I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Like, hold up! Like, let's really figure this out. Like, is it really Antifa? Are they really Bibles? Is it really in Portland or wherever you say it is? Like, I want to know if that's actually true before I jump on the bandwagon and say, yeah, look at Antifa burning books." Now, based on what I've seen, that happens to be the case, but not enough of us do our own research to figure out what's actually happening, and we just accept the narrative. And that narrative could have been accepted or communicated from either side of the aisle, and whoever shared the story could wrap their own narrative around it, and then whatever side of the aisle that you sit on, you could just potentially buy into that without ever doing your own research. So I think we ought to just take a pause when we hear things, when we see things, take a step back, regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on, and ask yourself, hold on, did Trump really say that? Hold up, is Biden really on the cognitive decline, or is that a ploy from the right side of the aisle to make him out to be a dunce? Like, let me figure it out. Like, let me do some research and really figure it out on my side.
Yeah.
That's what we ought to do more of. We just don't do enough of it. We just accept it as truth when we see it.
Yeah, and own what we promote, right? Like, if I'm promoting Black Lives Matter, or if I'm even just promoting it, let alone donating money, is like, what's the organization that's, what do they do? Like, other than create a narrative, like, where does that money go? Who are they supporting? In what ways do they do that? Like, and it's funny because I think it's just social construct where we just toe in line and go, oh, well, everyone's doing it and the narrative fits. So, now like a little bit of the social pressure, right, to conform. And if not, Lord forbid, you get demonized for not toeing in line, and you know what I mean? And then there's this other narrative that gets created for when you don't support something. It's really interesting. In fact, on a related note, from a social perspective, I find this very, very interesting, is look what happens by making and I'm not saying this is necessarily bad, but I just think it's interesting to consider, is by making masks and the spread of COVID a social and group focus. People that are naturally want to be victims will latch onto that victimhood and blame others for their circumstance. So for
instance,
either
either side, by the way.
Yeah. And so you look at this scenario by which someone will get sick, and then whose fault is it? Well, it's everyone else's. Well, it's your fault, Ryan, that my dad's sick and he died because people like you don't wear their masks, right? And it's like, whoa, like we've removed the accountability of even our own health, and we put it back on the group. And it's interesting because I honestly feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, like I know someone right now that like they kind of have this mentality, and their wife is a teacher, and they feel like her life is at risk. Like that's their perception. And I'm like, quit your job. Like if I honestly believed that I could die, right, by my profession, I wouldn't go. And if I was really like truly at risk, trust me, I wouldn't be wearing a lame little like cloth mask and still going out to dinner and dining and going to the grocery store, right? Like I would take the necessary precautions to like really honestly protect myself and my loved ones if I was really, really concerned about it. Now, but I'm not, so I don't do those things, right?
Let me give you the other side of that one though, because I see where you're coming from, and I happen to lean more towards what you're saying, but let's explore the other side for a minute. If you're a school teacher and you believe that, I think you have a right to fight for, hey, this is our health. I think you have a right to fight for your profession. Now, I don't think, based on the data and everything I've seen, that school teachers are at some immense level of risk because children just aren't getting COVID and they're not passing it by the metrics and the data and the research that I've seen. But if you believe that's the case, I don't think you have to acquiesce just because it's like, we'll go find a new job. That kind of falls into the same line of like, oh, you don't like this country? Get the hell out of here. I've never been that kind of guy. I'm like, you don't like this country? Then work through the proper channels, to affect the change that you'd like to see.
Yeah, but that's still a sense of ownership, saying, "Hey,
Definitely.
I don't like this, so I'm going to do something." So whether it's fighting for it or whatever, I think we're still in line. Like I agree with that as well. But what I'm saying is, too many people will just toe in line and then blame others for it if something happens to them. You know what I mean?
Right,
But they're not willing to
sure.
fight. They're not willing to adjust. And then if they get sick, it's like, okay, well, it's everyone else's fault. It's just an interesting
I see
approach that kind of naturally happens whenever we tackle something from a social way, where we then immediately look to like blame others if it happens.
Yeah. I mean, a great example of that is when people go to the store and they're like, I can't, they're getting this person's face and they're like, I can't believe you're not wearing a mask. It's like, well, two things here. Number one, I'm over here in the cheese aisle, minding my own business, and you deliberately walked 30 yards to come over and get in my space. Who's the greater threat?
Yeah.
You are. Just get out of my freaking face and go on about getting your milk or chips or whatever it is you're after, and let me just get my cheese here. Okay, so that's one.
Totally.
Number two is if you have a serious concern about being out in public and you think there's a serious health threat, don't go out in public.
Totally.
Like you said. Just don't go out. If you're worried about getting sick, I can respect that. It's your life. If that's a concern of yours, then just don't go out. Limit your outings, or have somebody else go out for you, or order it online. My wife does the Walmart online order. She doesn't have to interact with anybody. She just punches in a thing and she says, hey, I'm going to be here at this time. And they say, great, we'll have your food ready. And she pulls into the Walmart parking lot and they have like a limitless, or what do they call it? I don't know, like a no touch thing. I don't know, whatever, like a contactless thing is what they have. And she pops her trunk and they load it in and then she says thanks and off she goes. Like there's options there. You don't, oh, Ryan, you have to go into the gate. No, you don't. You don't have to go in there. And it's not anybody's obligation to make you feel better about your life and your choices and your level of risk that you're willing to assume. Because every time I get in my vehicle, forget about COVID for a second, there's a risk. There's a risk I could pull out of my driveway and somebody could T-bone me, or I could T-bone somebody else and we could both die, and that's a risk. And it's also a risk I'm willing to assume. This is why I get so sick of hearing people say, oh, so you're willing to have people die? You're okay with people dying? Well, yeah, I am. Like whether you acknowledge it or not, every time you get behind the vehicle of your, or the wheel of your vehicle, you are saying that you are okay with some people dying for the opportunity to drive on the roads.
Yeah, you do it with your teenage kids. The minute you give that key to your teenage kid, you are saying, I'm okay with him assuming the risk of death.
That's what it is. Whether you acknowledge it or not, it's there. Yeah. And people are like, oh, well, what level of risk is acceptable? That's actually a really good question. We need to figure that out collectively. So when we talk about, for example, opening the economy, well, people are gonna die. Yes, true. That's going to happen. We need to collectively decide what level of risk we're willing to assume in exchange for opening the economy back up. Oh, I can't believe, Ryan, you would talk about this. I can't believe you're okay with people dying. So are you. I just happen to acknowledge it. You aren't acknowledging it. Every time you get in your car, every time you're out in public, every time you sneeze, whether you have COVID or not, you're putting yourself and other people at risk, and you're willing to do it. Because whatever activity you're engaged in is more important than the risk that you're assuming. Just acknowledge it. Now, I don't want kids to die. I don't want grandma and grandpa to die. But I realize some of that's going to happen. So here's an idea. Let's mitigate some of that risk. Those people with some health issues, those are our elderly community. And by the way, they have a responsibility too. Just because they're at risk and just because they're elderly doesn't absolve them of any personal responsibility. If I'm in my 60s, 70s, maybe even 80s, I think half the average medium, and I heard this, and I'll have to look into it to find out exactly what the number is. But if I remember correctly, the medium of, or the average age for those who have died of COVID is 80 plus years old.
Yep.
So if I'm over 80, then yeah, I'm going to be a little bit more careful than I am at age 39. But that's personal responsibility. If I have diabetes or some sort of autoimmune deficiency or disease, illness, or my lungs are already compromised because I happen to be a smoker, for example, then I have a personal responsibility to limit my interaction with other individuals. And it isn't fair that you, Kip, who might be healthy, who might have taken care of themselves their entire lives, to say, well, because I'm unhealthy, you have to do all these things. Now, we can exercise a little common courtesy. I believe in that. I believe social distancing. I'm not a huge, obviously, mask advocate. I think if you want to wear a mask, great. If a store is requiring you to wear a mask, then maybe you ought to do that, or just don't patronize that store if you really don't want to at all. But I think a store has a right to tell you, hey, you have to wear a mask. Yeah. Just like a store has a right to say,
they're right,
you have to have shoes on when you come into the store. You have to have a shirt on. No shirt, no shoes, no service. Like, I don't believe that people are trying to like take away our liberties because they're asking us to wear masks. It goes well beyond that.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're getting off on tangents here, but
yeah.
But the idea is personal responsibility, right? Just be responsible for yourself.
Yeah. Regardless of what other people do. Yeah.
All right.
This is one of those parts where you hit stop and
that's right. Second question, or whatever we're on.
Take ownership. Third. Yeah. No, it's literally the second. Steven Zeller. Have you read the essay Fate of Empires by Sir John Glubb? And do you see the countless parallels to the American empire today?
I don't know. I haven't read it.
Dang. All right. Gavin Lynch. Favorite passage in the Bible. Yeah. See, now we're picking back up steam. Favorite Gavin Lynch, favorite passage in the Bible.
People ask me this a lot, and
really?
Yeah. And I wish that I read the Bible more than I do. I'm a God-fearing, believer, but I don't read the Bible as much as I would like. But so I don't know the verse. You can look it up. Some of you guys probably have it memorized. I don't. I've got a couple things memorized. Like one of the ones I remember is Romans 3:16. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. I'm not ashamed of him, right? But the one that I really like is in scriptures where they talk about faith without works. I mean, that's a crucial component of my life. Like, I have incorporated that and adopted that as part of my life, that faith without works is dead. In fact, it's not faith if you're not willing to put forth the effort. So I hear these people
really
talk about
faith. Yeah.
It's not faith. Yeah. They talk about, oh, you're just saved if you take upon his name. Well, yeah, okay, well, what does taking upon his name mean? Does that mean you just believe? Or does that mean you act in his name? And I think it's the latter. You act in his name, that there's some action behind your words. Because if you go out and you get shit-faced and you're violent and you screw everybody over at every opportunity you can and you say, but I believe in God, yeah, I think you're missing a critical component of that. And people fight me on that, actually. Nope. You've been saved. You've been saved. All of your sins have been, oh, great. I believe that all of my sins have been paid for, but I'm not really willing to stack them up just because they've already been paid for. Like, I still feel like I have some sort of, obligation to attempt to make good decisions, even though all of my sins have been paid for through Christ's blood already. Like, does that mean that I get a free pass? I don't think so, because he knows our heart, right? And I think that's a greater sin, is to say, I'll repent, or Christ's already taken upon my sins, so like I can go out and do this. No big deal. That's fine. It's already been paid for. Come on. Like, you can't honestly believe that. But that goes back to the personal responsibility thing, right? It's like, oh, man, all my sins have been paid for, so like I can do whatever the hell I want. Okay. See how that works out for you. I choose to not only believe in God and Christ, but I choose to attempt, I fall short all the time, but attempt to make righteous decisions. And that to me is a requirement.
Yeah.
Not that you get it perfect, not that you get it right all the time, but you attempt to do the best that you can.
Yeah. All right, Nick Larson. Not having grown up around guns, I plan on purchasing my first handgun. I'm going to the range to get my concealed carry permit this week. Besides listening to my instructors and practicing law, do you have any personal advice for a new gun owner besides the obvious? And talks about muzzle control, etc. Oh,
No.
and any favorite brands?
I'll get to the favorite brands in a second. No, I don't do that. Like that's the answer. Listen to your instructor. Learn the firearm safety rules. Obviously, secure your firearm. Have it accessible, but secure it away from your children. And in fact, I would say not only secure it from your children, actually familiarize them with it. Right? Because if it's some weird, like mysterious thing that dad does, they're going to be more curious about it. So take away the curiosity and say, all right, look, this is a powerful thing. Now, I'm not going to put my 6-year-old behind a pistol. But my 12-year-old, yeah, I'll put him behind a pistol. He'll be able to handle it. Whether it's a 22 or you get up to a 9mm, 45, bigger calibers, yeah, I'll get him behind that because I want him to know the gravity of the situation in which he's dealing with. There's a bang, there's a noise, there's a smell, there's a reaction. I want him to experience all of that. See, this is not a super soaker, bud.
Yeah.
Are super soakers a thing anymore?
I don't know. You may have dated us.
No, most of the men here know what the heck a super soaker is.
Yeah.
And I want him to know it. I want him to feel it and say, look, this is not a toy, right? It's a tool. It's a tool for producing some sort of outcome, some sort of desired effect. And so you don't need to be flaunting this around. You don't need to be playing. You felt it. There's a bang, there's a noise, there's a smell, there's a feel. Like, does that seem like a toy to you? No. Good. That's the respect you should have for it. So I take away that curiosity. But sometimes the answer, you already know the answer. And in this case, the answer is listen to your instructor, learn the firearm safety rules, train with your firearm under some supervision and some instruction. And that's the answer. You have the answer. Favorite manufacturers. I mean, I like Glock. I carry a Glock 43 is what I carry. For some, my hands are kind of small, so it fits my hands really well. For some guys, if you have bigger hands, the Glock 43 might just feel a little small, like your hand just might grab all the way around it. So maybe you go with a 17 or 19. But yeah, I like Glock personally. But experiment with a lot of different ones. Go to the range, talk to your instructor. It's not about what's cool. It's not about what makes you look good. It's about what feels right in your hand, what fires well, what you work well with. The ergonomics of the way that it fits your hand is very important. For me, the Glock does it. For you, it might be something else.
There's in some ranges will actually let you go down there, pay a flat cost, and then shoot like all their brands. And so that's a really great way to try to get your hands on different brands and grips and whatnot to figure out what's most comfortable. Because otherwise it's all hearsay, right?
How do you know?
It's like, yeah, Glock could be really popular. And then once you shoot it, you're like, oh man, that just doesn't feel right. And maybe an XD or something else feels greater. So, yeah.
And if it doesn't feel right, then don't force it. It's like, it just feels weird. Okay. Well, it doesn't fit your hand. The other thing is let go of the ego, right? Like just, if you're a new firearm owner, or aspiring owner, I should say, go into the gun shop or go into the range and just tell them that.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
But if you go in there, like you have a big swinging dick and you think that, you're going to fool everybody around, like, just tell them it's okay. Like, nobody thinks less of you. In fact, they're going to welcome you with open arms to the club and be like, oh, cool, and everybody's going to talk with you and be excited to teach you.
Yeah, totally.
So don't be an asshole and pretend that you know more than you do. Just say, guys, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me? And it feels stupid because we're not, as guys, like we're supposed to figure it out. Well, you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, how would you know if you don't know? So just say it. It's the same thing when you go into jiu-jitsu. It's like, I watched a couple of videos over the weekend of guys going in. They're like, yeah, I'm a purple belt. And then the instructor just worked him over, and it's like,
yeah.
And the guy was actually the instructor I watched on one video. Was very gracious. He says, come on, man, shoot straight with me. Are you really a purple belt? No. Like, I know. He's like, I'll tell you what, keep rolling with me. And the instructor kept rolling with him. And he was really good. He seemed, from what I saw in the video, to seem to be a really gracious and good instructor. And then he invited him. He's like, hey, man, I'll give you a week of free classes or whatever. Like, So he could have made him feel stupid, but I don't think people want to do that. I think we want to help, right? Like as men, it's like if I see somebody who's struggling or somebody who's new, I'm like, yeah, I want to help you. That's how most people are. But if you're an asshole, then nobody wants to help you. They want to destroy you. So just
because they want to help humble you.
right. So just go in there and say, look, I got to admit, I've never owned a firearm before. I see the importance of it. I know a lot of guys who own firearms. I know nothing. Can you help me? And he will help you, I promise. And he will be excited to do it. He won't think any less of you. So just own that. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's really okay.
Well, and just to share an example of, having your kids shoot firearms, I've had this happen where my boys, when they were younger, the first time they shot my handgun, they were all about it. Oh, yeah, let's shoot your handgun. They both shot one round, and they're like, yeah, I'm good. They're like, no, I don't feel comfortable, right? They had no idea. Like, they could even watch me shoot, and they had no idea. Until they actually shot a round, they were like, okay, that was kind of scary. Right? Like that was really powerful. Like it made them nervous, and it kind of
rightfully
should.
so.
Like
it should.
They should understand what that means to pull that trigger a little bit. So
yeah, if you're feeling flippant and lighthearted about it, or you have a child who is, it'd be like, probably not mature enough yet.
Yeah. All right, Mark LePerry. I would like to know how your spring wild turkey hunting experience was and what you learned this spring about hunting turkeys.
It was horrible.
You're like, turkeys suck.
Turkeys are assholes too. It was awesome, actually. I didn't harvest or kill a turkey. My son didn't either.
Did you get a chance? Did you see any or nothing?
Not a one. And then when season was over, we've got like 30 turkeys. We've got 3 hens, a couple of toms. I think there's 2 jakes.
All over the property?
All over the place.
That's funny.
The best part about it was I was outside. I was hanging out with my kid. We had a good time. We were way louder than we should have been. We were laughing at each other and how bad we were at calling, but it was awesome. But we didn't kill a turkey. So fall, hopefully fall. We put a food plot in. We've seen a lot of turkey around the property. My wife.
You can bait him. You can bait
No.
turkey on your. You can't. Okay.
No, we have a food plot, so it's
What's that mean?
technically agricultural. It's a space of land that you plant with a specific grass or some sort of plant that draws in the wildlife. But it's agriculture.
Yeah.
Technically, that's what it is.
Copy.
So that's acceptable, but you can't bait them other than that. So my wife went and sat with my son. In fact, he did shoot a coyote while he was out there. He was out at like 20 yards with his 410. Awesome. So he was out there, and this is the day that my wife went out. I didn't go out with him this day, but my wife went out with him, and they were sitting there, and all of a sudden they heard this rustling, and this coyote ran across their path. And like, that was weird because they put the decoys out and everything. And then, so my son got his 410 ready. And then another one ran by, and like my son, I don't know. Let's see. I'm trying to think about. Oh, he switched it off to safe. That's what he did. He switched it off to safe, and the coyote heard and stopped and looked, and he blasted him. And but it's a 410, so they tracked him for a while, and unfortunately, they never could find the thing. But my neighbor said he saw it a couple days later, and it was mangled. So
yeah,
it probably died. But my son then went with a friend who lives several miles away, and they had a couple of chances at turkey, but never could seal the deal. But they did see a moose, and that was really cool for my son. So a lot of cool experiences, although ultimately we didn't seal the deal.
Yeah, it's like my last deer hunt. The only deer I saw was in the back of other people's trucks on my way home.
Exactly. Yep. But it's still fun being out there and doing the thing. And I kind of feel like it's just, you got to put in your dues, Like I had a buddy who shot a really nice buck last year, like really nice. And I want to say he was roughly 300 yards away. And he was in his own yard, and he went outside and saw this buck, and he like walked down and shot it, and like just worked like that. And he's like, oh, I can't believe this happened. But he's also been hunting for probably 20 years, and he's sat in the stands, and he's hiked, and he's done everything for 20 years. And then one day it just happens to come together, and So you just got to put in your dues, and the more, it's just a time thing. The more you're out there, the more you're doing it, the more you learn, and the more opportunities that will eventually present themselves. And then when they do, you capitalize on it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if I could hit something from 300 yards.
Yeah,
That's tough.
yeah. Some of these guys, man, holy cow! I mean, shooting out 5, 6, 700 yards, it's like, phew, that's crazy. It's a good shot.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome. All right, James Lay, how do you like Dave Ramsey and his approach to financial wellness?
I think he's got a lot of great stuff. I mean, there's no doubt that he's helped literally millions of individuals
Yeah.
pay off debt and get their budgets in line,
Proven
start
system.
investing,
Yeah.
start making the good choices regarding their finances. I think he's a little misguided, quite a bit misguided when it comes to the stock market. And that comes from somebody who's had a lot of training. And I'm not up to date, so I won't say that, but had in the past a lot of training about how the stock market works and how funds and investments work. And I had a legal obligation to be studied and researched and trained and then do what was in my client's best interest. Unfortunately, with Dave Ramsey, he can talk about whatever he wants. And because he doesn't have these licenses, he isn't under the same level of scrutiny that a lot of these financial professionals are. So when it comes to debt, when it comes to cash flow and some of these basic principles and understanding about how much to put away and things like that, I think he's got some great stuff. But he's not a fiduciary. He doesn't have a license as far as I know. And so he isn't held to the same standard as some of these financial professionals are, which allows him to make some misguided recommendations specifically with the stock market. And if you're doing your planning, for example, and I haven't followed him for a long time, so I'll try to give the benefit of the doubt, but if you're doing your financial planning based on your mutual fund getting 8% or more, which I've actually heard him say year in and year out, that's not a good way to approach your money, because you're not going to get 8% compounding every single year. Maybe it averages out before fees, but if you're basing your portfolio or your financial plan on 8% and really what you're realizing is 3.5%, well, you can see you're going to fall significantly short of your goals and objectives. So like anything, even the things I'm saying here, take it all with a grain of salt, get as much information as you can, try to be as objective as possible, especially when it comes to your money, and get those emotions out of the way. But generally, I think he's got some good ideas, and I think he's helped millions of people. I just think there's some other areas, some more advanced areas where he might be a little misguided.
Yeah. Do you think, what do you think about the economy? I'm so torn. You know, all these companies, people don't have work. We have this whole stimulus thing, but the economy seems to be unaffected yet. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, it might be lagging
What's your
a
pulse?
little bit.
I'm waiting for stuff to go crashing down.
And
Which,
it
by the
might.
way, I'm the reason why I bring it up is because I'm like, it's probably a great time to be thinking about buying, right? And so I'm waiting for stuff to come tumbling a little bit. But
Well, so I believe in efficient markets. So if you've done any research at all with the stock market, you'd understand what that term is. But essentially what it means is that the market is priced exactly where it needs to be. And individual stocks are priced exactly where they need to be. Because if, like, for example, I'll say it this way, there isn't a stock that's underpriced.
yeah, it's priced based upon what people are willing to pay. And if they're willing to pay,
Exactly.
then that's what the market is, right?
Right.
That's why you
So
can't
people,
complain about homes, for instance. Yeah.
exactly. So people will say, oh, this is underpriced right now. Or I know some information about this particular. Well, if you know it, everybody else knows it. And if everybody else knows it, otherwise it's illegal, by the way. But if everybody else knows it, then that's what Martha Stewart went to jail for. But our congressmen don't. That's a whole other story. And if everybody knows it, then that information you think you know is already priced into the stock. It's already factored into the equation. So you're not getting it on a deal. Now, I will say generally that things are cyclical, and if the market generally is trending downwards, then that's a pretty good opportunity there, or could at least represent an opportunity to get into the market while things are low, and then hopefully they appreciate and they grow, and then you can realize some of that growth. But again, portfolios are very interesting because let's say you had a portfolio, an investment portfolio of, we'll just use $200,000. So people say, oh, I have $200,000. No, you don't. You have a digital piece of paper that says that your share of the company is worth currently today, as of right now, $200,000. And you really actually don't have $200,000 until you sell it for $200,000. It's just an arbitrary number. It's a placeholder until you're ready to sell it. So when we had that big crash in 2008, 2009, people asked Warren Buffett, well, how much did you lose in the stock market? He said, I didn't lose anything because I haven't sold any of my stocks. Same thing with real estate. Oh, I lost 40% of the value in my real estate. No, unless you sold it.
Cash in. Yeah.
But if you just held on to it, and I had real estate. We had a home that was worth roughly $250,000 at the time. And if I remember correctly, the lowest value I saw it go to was about 180, 185. And so I'm like, oh, I lost $50,000. No, we didn't sell it. And now it's back. It's worth more than what we originally paid for it. And by the way, it's actually not worth that much because we haven't sold it.
Yeah.
So we got to be very careful of getting wrapped into like how much money we have in the market. You don't have any money in the market until you sell it.
Yeah.
These are things that people get worked up in because of fear and greed, the emotions that keep you from making good financial decisions.
Yeah. Which I've heard you say in the past is like, that's everyone's Achilles heel is constantly checking on it. And you know what I mean? Trying to, getting emotionally tied in, just leave it alone and let it work itself out. Yeah.
Make smart, rational decisions and let it run its course and work your plan. Don't be discouraged or dissuaded by outside circumstances and events. The market will go up and it will go down. And then here's my prediction of what the market, because you were asking me what I think the market's going to do. Yeah. I think it's going to go back up. And then I think it's going to go down. And then I think it's going to go up. And then I think it's going to go down. That's my prediction. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know what's going to go up and down to, but my prediction is that's what's going to happen.
Because that's what it always does through the last however long. Yeah.
That's what the market does.
All right. Spencer Hancock, what are your top 3 check-in points during weekly family council?
Well, we do it daily, actually. I'm just writing some notes down here. So
yeah, no worries.
We do.
You're like that. That was some solid stuff. I'm going to put an Instagram post of market's going to go up, market's going to go down. Brian Mickler.
All right. So what my weekly check-in points, is that what he said?
Yeah. Kind of like 3 check-in points during your family council. Like, I don't know, key things that you always cover.
Yeah. So we do it daily. One of the things is
night or morning. I can't remember. You do mornings, huh?
We do mornings, but then we also do in the evening. We do kind of loosely, and that's one of the things I was going to allude to here in a second, is that we do these types of things at dinner. So dinner isn't just like eating. It's let's converse, let's talk about our day. So one thing that I ask all of my kids, and then my kids ask my wife and I, is what was your favorite part about today? Yeah. That's actually a really fun thing because we get to know, okay, they enjoyed this and they liked this, and then we can do more of that, and that's important for us. One thing that we don't like check in on, but that I'm keenly aware of, is what is the mental health of my children right now? Like, I really want to be aware, like my son, he seems off today. What's going on? Is he tired? Is he upset about something? So like I try to tap into the mental status of where they are on a day by day basis. And even more frequently than that, if something's bothering my kids, and conversely, if they're really excited about something, I don't dismiss that either. I'm like, man, he's having a good day. What's up?
What's going on?
Like, I want to know why, because I want to replicate that. So again, it's what's the best part of your day. That's checking in the evening. It's just the mental status. And then I really focus on growth for them. Like, what is it that they're doing to push themselves outside of their comfort zone? What are they learning? How are they expanding? How are they putting themselves under pressure? Like, what is it that they're doing to expand their capabilities, mental, emotional, physical capabilities? I would say those are the 3 most pressing things for us.
Okay. And does that differ, dinner versus morning, or?
Morning is more like, what do we have going on today?
Yeah, like schedules, double checking.
Right. Let's all get on the same page. Where are you at? Okay, Trish, what are you doing? What kid needs to be where? What activities do we have going on? Like, my wife took my 4 kids. Holy cow. My 4 kids. I like did a 4-year rewind right there.
The other day I told someone I had what did I say? I had like, did I say 7 kids or something? I'm like, Actually, I don't have 7 kids. I have 6.
Exactly.
But
It's hard to keep track.
it was super
times.
funny. I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Sorry.
You just add an extra one in there every once in a while. Just depending on the attitude. You
6,
add one,
7.
you take one away.
Yeah. Yeah. Today I have 3 kids.
I average 6. Sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 8. But there's always around 6 kids around here.
I at least have 6 that I know of. Yeah.
What were we talking about? I can't remember what I was saying.
You're talking about your check-in points in the morning, schedules.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, maybe I'll come back to it. It was going to be really, really profound.
Yeah, it was profound. What's it? Stop and hit record.
Yeah.
All right.
What was I saying? I said, okay, I've got my 4 kids. Oh, my wife. I got it. My wife took my 4 kids to the beach yesterday. And so, we wanted to get on the same page. They left around 2, 3 o'clock. They didn't get home till 8:30, which happened to work out just fine in this instance because last night I trained. So that was good. I got home about 7:30, 7:45. Didn't cut into anybody's day. Their activities didn't cut into mine. Like, it was good, but we got on the same page, and that's what the morning routine is about.
Got it. All right, Justin Herzl, suggestions for those of us who are impromptu homeschoolers but still working full-time from home. It seems that the school system still expects the students to take on a full workload without having a full-time instructor to manage it.
Well, so I think the way you're approaching this is you're saying, oh, they're expecting us to do this. Like, it's your job. Like, that's your job.
Yeah, raise your kids.
It's not their job. Now, a lot of us have outsourced that to the public school system, which is very convenient, but it's still not their job. Okay, so please flip that around and say, like, they expect us to do this. Well, your standard should be higher than theirs anyways. But here's what I found. And I don't know, is this Justin?
Justin, yeah.
So, Justin, I don't know how far you are into the homeschooling process, but what I have found, have you ever done homeschooling, Kip?
I did for a few years when I was a kid, but that's
you personally
we haven't
did some homeschooling.
Kids.
Okay.
No, actually, we homeschooled one of my sons when he was
your 7th child. You homeschooled.
Yeah, the one I can't remember his name. No, we homeschooled one of them for a year. Yeah.
Okay. So what I found with homeschooling, and I was actually a little worried about this when we started a little over a year ago. Well, just about a year now because school's starting up. So we've been doing it a full year now. Is at first the schooling only took like 2 to 3 hours. The actual instruction schooling component of it. Yeah. And I remember talking with my wife about this, saying, "Are they?" That doesn't
seem right.
Yeah, I was like, "Are they?" Because they're at school for what, 6, 7, 8 hours a day.
Yep.
So I'm like, "Are they getting the same?" And she's like, "Yes, believe it or not, they are. In fact, they might be getting a little bit more because they're getting individualized attention. It's hyper focused." And I say this with all due respect, we're not waiting on slow kids.
Yeah.
There's no,
you're teaching at the level by which, right. You're teaching at the level by which your kid can learn, not someone else's. Yeah.
Right. And so my 6-year-old can be doing her thing while my 12-year-old is doing this other thing. And then the 9-year-old is doing this and the 4-year-old's coloring. Right. So everybody's doing different things, but it's all overlapping. And so there's no recess, there's no potty breaks, there's no nap time. It's just hyper focus for 2 to 3 hours. And then we'll go outside or we'll play or we'll explore. One of the very first weeks that we were homeschooling, I remember my wife took the kids out and they found a frog and they found a toad outside in a little riverbed. And so they brought it in and those were the mascots for a couple of days until we let them go a couple of days later. And then I looked in the classroom the next day and my wife had printed out an assignment on the difference between toads and frogs and the anatomy and all this stuff. It's hyper efficient. So we think that we need to spend 6, 7, 8 hours a day. No, it's going to take you 2 to 3 because the other 5 hours is all babysitting at school.
Yeah.
It's recess. It's assemblies. It's DARE programs, if they even do that anymore. It's going from classroom to classroom. It's waiting on the slow kids because they can't get it for whatever reason. All of that time is just burned up with those activities. And really, they're only learning for 2 to 3 hours. So you'll find that it's much more efficient and effective. So get that done, and then enjoy your guys' selves. Like, just enjoy it. Just be together, enjoy your time. My two sons, my oldest sons, they help me in the store. They're doing math. They're learning about fulfilling orders. They're learning about communicating with people when we screw up. They're learning the consequences of screwing up because they have to pay for it. Because I pay them per package, and if they mess up, it's like, well, I'm not going to pay you for that package. Like, you messed it up. Like, why would I pay you for messing up? And they're like, oh, I guess we better not mess up. Right, exactly. Yeah. Because you actually owe me money back. If I get an order back in the mail, I'm like, well, you owe me $1 because you got that one wrong. They're like, oh. It's like, that's the deal. Like, so they're learning a lot of different things just through our interaction and our daily experiences in life together.
Do you think that you and your wife will get to a point where you feel like, hey, I can't teach them this level of math because I don't know well enough or anything like that? No.
This is one argument that I hear from people all the time about homeschooling. I'm going to leave the teaching to the professionals. You're a freaking parent. You're the professional. You're the kid's parent.
Yeah.
Like, you don't think you can do as good a job as a school teacher? And by the way, I'm not diminishing what school teach. You can. Well, I promise you can. No.
I never took trig in high school. Yeah.
No. Stop. Full stop. No. You can do it. I promise you can do it. Your teacher didn't take trig either.
That's probably true, huh?
Okay, your teacher didn't. Your kid's teacher didn't do all the things they went through it when they were 8, just like you did. That's it. They're learning how to administer a textbook. And again, I want to be very clear because I know there's school teachers listening. I'm not diminishing the work you do. I'm just saying you can't do better than I can do it. But you do a great job when I'm unwilling or incapable of doing it on my own. But we're in the position, and a lot of parents are, where you are willing and able and capable, and you can do just as great a job as a school teacher. In fact, you could do a better job because you don't have 30 kids in your classroom. You have 3 or 7, Kip, like you have, and 3 like I have. So you can do a better, and also you know your child.
Yeah.
Intimately. Like my daughter, she might have some dyslexia, but she's smart. So she could trick a teacher, again, not to diminish the teacher, but she could trick a teacher who has 35 other kids to worry about. We see it because we know her. We know she's smart, and for whatever reason, she struggles with spelling. I'm like, what's going on here? She's not dumb. She's very intelligent. So what does she do? She memorizes the books. And she reads them. She's like, reads. And I'm like, she's reading it verbatim. And my wife's like, she's not reading it. She's memorized it. That would fall through the cracks with a lot of school teachers. Again, not about the school teacher, just the amount of work.
Circumstance. Yeah.
They've got 30 kids in their classroom. They've got all this. I have a close friend, Wayne and Amy McIntosh. Amy's a school teacher. And we've talked with them quite a bit. And she's like, I'm just so overwhelmed with the workload, the volume of red tape and reports and reporting and accounting, not the workload of teaching, but the workload of administering. So now you got 30 kids. You don't know these kids. You don't know what they're being taught at home. You don't know the level of their parents' involvement. You don't know their own capabilities or what they might individually be dealing with. And you got 60 to 70 to 80 maybe percent of your work is wrapped up in administration and red tape and reporting and accounting and all that stuff. And a parent is worried that they can't do as good a job as a school teacher.
Yeah.
Once you got it. I promise you got it.
Yeah.
It's really if cool. You don't learn trig so you can teach your kid, like you can learn it.
Yeah.
You're not dumb either. So figure it out. I hate that excuse. I hate that. When people say that, I hate it. Well, I
don't think it's an excuse.
It is an excuse.
That statement.
I'm going to leave the teaching to the professionals. You're a parent. That's way more relevant than any other profession out there. Don't diminish what you mean and what you bring to the table.
Yeah. No, but I do think that like maybe we've put maybe teachers up on a pedestal and think, man, I don't know that stuff. Like I am like honestly not as an excuse, but really like a concern of their ability to actually teach that concept, right, to their children. I think a lot of people might think that.
Yeah,
But to
because
your
they're
point, it's like
being,
maybe you should learn. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm saying is like, if you
Yeah.
are saying that, it's because you're being lazy.
Yeah. And not willing to step
It's
up and
way
actually
easier to
learn
say,
it.
well, I'm going to let the professionals do it.
Yeah.
We're not talking about freaking brain surgery here.
So I'm wondering if our numbers are off on our kids. You ended up short one, so you're down to 3, and I went up one. So
We
maybe
just
I
traded.
snagged one of your kids. Yeah.
That's fine. Just as long as he took the right one, which varies on a day-to-day basis.
I was gonna say, are we gonna throw out names here of
No, we're not.
who's moving in with Uncle Kip?
No, we're not. It's
All
just
right.
varies day to day, hour by hour. Actually, is more accurate. My son, my second son today, I got home. I ran to the post office to drop some packages off, and I got home, and Brecken's like, "Eli's bleeding," and I'm like, "What?" Like that's what he led with.
That's
I'm like,
awesome.
"Okay, does he have a bloody nose? Did he pick a scab? Like did he fall? Like what happened?" And he's like, "You know that shark jaw that you got him?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, well, he put his foot in there and he was going to see how high he could put the shark jaw up on his leg. And then he tripped and then it like scraped on his ankle and he was bleeding so much everywhere. And I'm like, oh my gosh. All right, let me go look. And he has this Band-Aid on, and Brecken comes in. He's like, look at the rag. And there's blood all over the rag. And it's awesome.
My first immediate thought process was, is there blood on the floor? Did he get on the
Yeah.
carpet?
We have wood floors, so we don't have to worry about the
Oh
carpet
yeah, you're good.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Just rub it in. It's like a form of stain.
Yeah, just rub some dirt on it and toughen up. No. All right.
That's
What
funny. All
else?
right, Wayne Taylor. Hey lads, my 13-year-old son gets picked on a fair bit at school. Problem is, it's a girl. I don't know if that's the problem, but my wife
Well,
tells
that
him
is
he
a
should
problem
tell.
for sure.
Yeah, but well, there's more to the
Because you
problem,
could
though, right?
punch little Billy in the teeth, but it's a little bit more sensitive about punching little Suzette or whatever in the teeth.
Yeah, my wife tells him he should tell the teacher, but I disagree. But then again, I don't know what to tell him. What are your thoughts?
I think that you should enroll him in martial arts if he's not already. And I'm not saying so he can punch little Kim in the teeth. Although maybe.
Yeah.
Because look, if my oldest son actually had that issue, and this girl, she was a big gal, and she was picking on him, and I said, punch her. If she gets physical with you, punch her. Like all these women want to be treated equally. You got it. You're gonna
Here's what it looks like.
you don't
Yeah.
get an excuse. Like I'm not gonna instigate, but like if a woman assaulted me, I would punch her right back, and I would end it if she assaulted me. And I'll say it this way. Let me say it this way: if I was in physical danger, okay, if a
Yeah.
woman came up and slapped me, because I cut her off in the line at the grocery store or something, like I wouldn't beat the shit out of her. Okay, that's not what I'm saying, because I'm in no serious
You're not
danger,
threat. Yeah.
right? Okay, so I need to throw that out there. Like I don't want somebody to like cut this snippet out. If a woman, I'd beat the shit out of her, and I know people will do
Stop.
that. Yes,
Yeah.
and they would cut that snippet out. So please, just if you're gonna do that, put the full snippet in of like my disclaimer as well. Okay, back to the conversation. I'm not saying martial arts because he may need to defend himself, although he might. And you would want him to be capable of being able to do that, whether it's little Kim or little Tim that he needs to defend himself against. Bullies don't pick on capable, strong kids, confident kids. They pick on the weak. And martial arts will develop a sense of confidence in your son that people will see and say, that's somebody I don't want to mess with. I know it. If you're not familiar with martial arts and you're not familiar even with competitive sports, it would be very hard for you to understand and wrap your head around that. But if you are, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's something about somebody, whether it's a 9-year-old or a 45-year-old who just has something about him where you're like, not going to mess with that person. And that's what he needs. He needs that. Now, as far as telling the teacher, yeah, I would actually say probably he should do that. because that's the first line of defense and that's like the chain of command. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If somebody's assaulting or messing or bullying your kid, then yeah, I think the teacher should know. We had this issue. So I told my son, you need to let the teacher know. And he let the teacher know. And I said, if it continues, then you go up the chain of command. You let the principal know. So he did let the principal know. In fact, I actually went and visited the principal. And I didn't get my son involved. I just said, hey, Mr. Jolly, great guy. I actually served with him in a church calling. And I said, look, here's what's happening. He's like, yeah, I'm actually aware of it. And I said, well, what do you plan on doing about it? This is your responsibility to ensure this is a space where they can learn and feel comfortable enough to learn and do what they need to do. And we had a great conversation about it. And I just said, I want you to know that I trust that you'll handle this. And I want you also to know that you can trust me to raise my son in a way that he will defend himself. Just want to have that clear. Okay, I got it. And so Brecken and I worked on training, wrestling, punching, proper punch, all that kind of stuff. And, it grew out of it. She probably had a little crush on him. She was bigger than him. He got bigger. He started to gain some more confidence, and it fizzled out. Nothing came of it, which is probably likely what's going to happen. But I think you can do both. I think you can have him work the proper chain of command, which he should, and also develop a sense of confidence in being able to defend himself.
Yeah, and that confidence comes from training and understanding the threat as well, right?
Well, confidence comes from competence.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think, well, confidence, some people are born with it, some people aren't. No, it comes from competence. Yeah. You are competent in a skill, therefore you're confident about it. You earn that level of confidence. And then you see it. You just see it. You feel it. You know when somebody has that level of confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. And it changes the threat, right? Something that used to be a threat is no longer a threat, right? And so you even approach it differently, right? Like if someone is going to start a fight with me, like in my life versus in my past, I would have felt threatened. I would have got an adrenaline rush, and you know what I mean? Would have gotten like a rush of feelings and emotions and not understood the threat, where I think that has been drastically changed now in my life, where I wouldn't see it as much as a threat. And thus my emotional response to it is drastically different.
Right. Well, let's take a jiu-jitsu example. I've seen wrestlers come into jiu-jitsu, and what do when they get in trouble? They turn their back.
Yeah, they wrestle.
Right? So they go flat on the ground and they put themselves flat, and then the guy takes their back and chokes them out. Well, when they start to develop and learn the game, they realize that, being on my back is not really a threat. In fact, I can be threatening while I'm on my back. And so you learn it through repetition, through exposure, and then you realize, okay, well, what was a threat is no longer a threat, and I can handle this and deal with it. And then you deal with it, and it's not an issue. The other thing I was thinking about as you were saying that is, have you ever seen those signs that people put on their house, like, I believe in the Second Amendment, but my neighbor doesn't? It's like, yeah, it's funny, but it's also kind of true. It's like, look,
that's funny.
You don't want to mess with this house. You can go mess with somebody else, but this is not an easy target. And you don't want to make yourself that. So you don't want to make you want to help your son in a way that it's like, not going to mess with him, but that little four-eyed geek over there, I'll mess with him. It's like, you go mess with somebody else. It ain't going to be me. And by the way, you should also teach him to stick up for the four-eyed geek, because that's what we do as men. But don't make yourself the weakest link. Allow that to be somebody else.
Yeah, I like it. One more question. You good?
Excuse me. Yeah.
Okay. Paul Dominion, once you started succeeding, did you find it difficult to find close relationships outside the Order of Man community? And I find this, I like this question a little bit though, Ryan, because I think guys, I think joining the Iron Council, sometimes jumping in and joining us in the Order of Man movement, there's some transformation happening, right? They're on a different path than they were in the past, and some of these guys may find that these past relationships that they had were toxic, or not ideal. And so I think it kind of speaks to that a little bit about, struggling with finding people outside of the Iron Council or outside of Order of Man that's on the same page as them.
Okay, so maybe I misunderstood the framing of the question a little bit. So I want to approach this in two different ways. Yeah, it's going to be harder naturally, I think, to find people who are on the same path as you if you're on the path of success, we'll call it.
Yeah.
If you're on that path, and it looks a little different for everybody, but if you're on that path,
growth mindset,
yes,
focused on no ownership, no victimhood, right, that whole thing. Yeah.
There's fewer people on that path than the other path, which is just complacency, mediocrity, living day to day, paycheck to paycheck. There's definitely fewer people on the path to success. So naturally, it's going to be harder to find those people. But I'll tell you what, the people on the path to success, they do all walk the same path and they congregate together. So all you need to do is to insert yourself into that congregation.
Yeah.
So they're going to business luncheons, they're networking, they're going to events, they're part of masterminds and other networks about success. You mentioned the Iron Council. They're there. And so it just becomes your obligation and responsibility to seek them out and then to go insert yourself into their midst, their congregation, whatever that is. And what's fascinating about it is it's really easy to tell. Like you can see people who are successful. You can see the way they live their life. It's kind of that adage, that scripture, by their fruits you shall know thee. If they're producing superior results in their life, then you can be sure that they know something that maybe you haven't quite figured out, and that it should attract you. It should be attracting to you like moth to the flame, right? Yeah. So you have to seek those people out. You definitely have to be more intentional about the associations that you're having, because they're not.
The default's not going to work anymore. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're like, Kip, you're not a default kind of guy. I'm not a like, oh, I'm just going to wake up and like whatever happens today happens and it's going to be cool or whatever. No. That's not how I work my day. That's not how you work your day. That's not how successful. And I've talked with 300-400 highly successful men. They're not default people. They're not like, oh, I found myself in this thing and like, whoa, what amazing. Like, I didn't know I'd be here today. That's not how they operate.
And the relationships aren't default, right? Like you think about it, like before you got on this path, like who were your friends? The guy that happened
in high school or at the gym
you played
or whatever.
Sports with, or maybe the neighbor or your wife's friend's husband. Like it wasn't people that you intentionally like said, hey, I need to be around this kind of guy because he is stellar. It was by chance, really.
Right. Yeah. So I think the key there is to be intentional. And if you're intentional about it and you're surrounding yourself with those individuals, I don't think this will be a big concern or an issue for you. The initially where I was going to go with it is more of like relating to people. I thought that's where he was going with it. Do you have a hard time relating with people who aren't on the same path? I used to. In fact, candidly, I used to think down on these people.
Yeah.
Like they were inferior. I don't really think that anymore. I have more empathy for those individuals than I did in the past. I can't believe, why would they be doing it? They didn't do that. Now it's more like, man, I wish they knew this, or I wonder why they've gone down that path instead of this. It's more empathetic than it is looking down upon. And I just realized I'm going to relate to different people on different levels. The way that I relate with you, Kip, is going to be different than, maybe somebody I see at the gas station. I'll give you an example. This is a silly example, but it'll undermine the point. There's this individual at a gas station that I frequent, and this person, I always thought, they have the worst attitude. Like, this person has the worst attitude. Like, what is their problem? This seemed like a really bad attitude. And my son went with me one day and he said the same thing. I didn't ask anything. We got done and he said, man, they have a bad attitude. I said, I know, right? Like, that's what I think. And then a couple of weeks ago, I made the decision to not think that and just figure out what in the world is going on with this person.
Yeah.
And so I made it my mission to see if I could get this individual to just be a little nicer. And one day I walked into the gas station and I attempted to strike up a conversation by asking something. Maybe I can't even remember what it was, something personal, or I made a joke about somebody that was in line before me. It was something like that.
Yeah.
And their whole countenance changed. Their everything completely changed. I was like, I walked out of there. They had a great conversation. We laughed, we joked about it, and then I left. No big deal. And I walked out. I was like, whoa, I have been misjudging this person, and I had more influence than I thought I did. And now I go into that gas station, and it's good. This person is kind, and they're friendly, and we ask about the day, and like it's a good little relationship for what it is. I realize it for what it is, right?
Yeah.
I buy some stuff there occasionally and get gas, right? But that's what I'm talking about, is we don't need to judge people. We don't need to rush to assume that we know what they're dealing with. We just try. I personally, I'm not great at this. Something I'm working on. I just strive to realize the relationship is what it is, and I can just attempt in my own small way to make that person's day just a little better. That's it. And so where I used to look down on that, I look at it as more of an opportunity to like figure out why this person is the way they are. Or maybe I'm wrong and I'm just interpreting it incorrectly. And so I just give the relationship or the conversation some context, approach it a different way, and it changes the way I see things.
Yeah.
And I realize that not all relationships are going to be business relationships. Some are just going to be, I just pump gas at this gas station and I want to be friendly with that person. And that's the extent of our relationship. And other people is like, okay, I'm going to train jiu-jitsu with this person. Probably not going to talk business ever. Probably never going to invite this individual over to have, barbecue at my house, but we train together and I admire and respect and enjoy training with this person. And I see each relationship for what it is. And I don't have any expectation outside of that. So I did have a hard time relating to people that weren't on my path. And now I don't care. If you're on your own path, good. I just want you to have some success. And if you want to join me on my path, I would love to have you here, but it's going to be my path, not yours.
Yeah. Interesting. What was that trigger? Like, what was that switch for you before where you felt like you were passing judgment, and, what changed?
That's a good question. I guess I looked at it as a challenge. So I had this really interesting experience when I was little. So we had this postman, and he was very, looking back on it, it was so long ago, but he was very cold, like really just cold. He seemed cold.
Yeah. Like a mailman? The mailman was
the mailman. Yeah. He was very stern and he was very cold. And I remember saying hi to him. I was little. I must have been 8 or 9 years old. And he didn't blew me off or something. And I remember one day I asked my mom about it. And I said, the mailman was a jerk today, or whatever I said. And she said something. She's like, yeah, I wonder what he's going through. And I'm like, what do you mean? I don't know. He's just a jerk. I don't know what he's going through. And I am not exaggerating when I say this. I remember vividly and specifically my mom making it her mission to change him. Just like make him smile, make him happy. And one year, she has amazing zucchini bread. And one year, she made zucchini bread for this guy. And he was our mailman probably for 3 or 4, maybe 5 years tops. And every year for Christmas, she would do zucchini bread. She would leave a note. She would tell him she appreciated what he did. And then one day, he changed. Like, he just changed. And he left. I get a little emotional because of how powerful we are. Like, we really are powerful if we realize. And one day, if I remember correctly, he left a note from my mom or something, and she read it to me, and he was so grateful to her for how kind she had been to him when nobody else was like that. And his whole countenance changed. He was friendly, he would smile, he would joke with my sister and I, and he was just nice. And that to me was such an amazing introduction to how powerful and influential just one person can be if they just decide to do it. That's all it takes. It just takes a little effort, just a little understanding, a little kindness, a little bit more. I've used the word grace in the past, and I like that word. It's just a little bit more grace. I don't know your situation. I'm not going to judge you about it. I'm just going to try to make your circumstances better, even if it's just for this small interaction of you handing me my mail. I remember that. That was, 30 years ago? And as a good lesson for me. And I don't always apply it, especially on social media. I rush to conclusions. I'm an asshole to people, and but man, those are lessons that are pretty valuable for me.
Yeah, I like it. All right, sir. So to join us in future AMAs, to submit your questions, you can do so via Facebook at facebook.com/group/Order of Man. And of course, any of you interested in banding with us and joining us within the Iron Council, you can learn more at orderofman.com/Iron Council. Main event still in the books.
Main event's still on. October 9th through the 11th. Orderofman.com/main event.
Perfect. And then you can follow Mr. Mickler on Twitter and Instagram at Ryan Mickler. And of course, share the message and the movement. If you like the conversations here or from the other episodes in the podcast, you can do so by subscribing to YouTube, subscribing to this podcast, sharing the message on social media and whatnot. And of course, you can get your swag, your Order of Man swag at store.orderofman.com.
Can't get that hat you're wearing anymore, though.
No.
Discontinued, man.
He's going to sell it on eBay for triple the price. This is my 401k investment, is my old Order Man
at
swag.
Least triple. You can probably get $100 out of that thing.
I got the Brotherhood T-shirt too. That's
that
one
one's
of my favorites.
even more rare. I don't even have that one anymore. Can you send me one so I can
sell
have
it to you? Sell it to you.
Sell it to you. Sell it back. All right. Well, guys, we appreciate you. Great questions today. Hopefully we gave you some answers. We'll be back on Friday, of course, for the Friday field notes, and just keep the conversations alive. Keep active with us on the socials. Ask the good questions. Rate and review the podcast if you can. Just takes a quick second. It goes a long way in promoting what we're doing. And let's keep getting after it. All right, guys, go out there, take action. Become the man you are meant to be.